Welcome back, everyone, to another Designers Discuss.
Disgusting.
If you've noticed, we haven't changed clothes in the last 3 videos. It's because we've been here for the last
3 days
6
straight.
days.
6 days?
Yeah, you just don't know time. It's
Yeah,
fast.
I've lost time.
Designers Discuss.
Today, we're going to jump into another design tool known as InVision Studio. InVision first started as a prototyping tool that really connected well with Photoshop and Sketch, and then they built their own. We don't know who had that bright idea, but I'm just kidding. No, they decided to kind of build their own tool so they could create their own ecosystem.
And more robust prototyping.
Yeah,
which is
totally, which we'll get into. So InVision traditionally, like I said, was just a prototyping tool, and you could export your artboards into InVision and click them together.
Web-based?
Yep.
It's always been web-based?
Yeah, yes, but you can view it through a Miro app on your phone, but that's about it. You can't really do anything on you can't manage it on your phone. So definitely go and check out InVisionApp.com/studio. We've had other videos in the past with how to actually export from Sketch to InVision, so we're not going to cover that today. We're really just going to look at InVision Studio, the tool.
Yeah.
And Sean, you haven't done much.
Not much.
With InVision Studio.
Yeah.
And I hadn't done much until recently when I worked on one of our projects.
Well, you took it upon yourself to be like, I want to learn Studio. This is a great project to do it. So you took existing assets from Sketch?
I started that way, but then I pretty quickly abandoned that and just went from scratch.
Cool.
So there was a few things that I copied over. I used humans, which we talked about in our last video, just as a placeholder, though I need to talk to you. I need some illustrations.
That's the next thing.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm excited.
Okay. So on InVisionApp.com/studio, you can actually download Studio for free. Is it free forever?
Yeah, because you pay for InVision.
Yeah, you pay to sync it and prototype it. So you want to pay for the service, the web-based service that does the prototyping. You have to pay for that, but the actual design tool is free.
Yeah.
Which is kind of where it maybe wins a little bit above Sketch. If you're just getting started, free is better than $100 maybe.
Yeah, and that's true. Like I would, I'm partial to Sketch because I know it more intimately. I don't spend a lot of time exploring other tools.
Yep.
But if you are starting out, it is a good idea probably to take a look at them equally.
Completely agree.
Because they do a lot of...
It's also a beautiful website.
It's a beautiful website.
They do really good design work.
Yeah, as they should.
I just have to brag a little bit.
Okay.
On the original InVision website, Clark.
Right. You told me this.
I don't remember. I was like one of the first users, and I said,
for just the prototyping.
For like the old school, the original InVision prototyping tool, and I said, hey, I'm using this, and he took a quote from me. My little face was on the website.
So you're gone.
I think if you actually like...
Yeah, we should do
like an
internet
look
time
back.
machine.
Yeah,
the Wayback Machine.
Okay, so now what we're talking about today. InVision Studio is awesome. I will say I've actually really kind of fallen in love with the tool as a whole. So if you watched our video on Sketch, a lot of this is going to feel almost exactly verbatim. If anything, they have a little bit less features because they've had a little bit less time to add to it as far as just the editor goes. But 90% of it is about the same. I'm gonna open a new doc because that is the project I'm working on right now. Secret. Well, it's gonna go slow, which actually is probably my biggest complaint with Studio.
Yeah.
Compared to Sketch and then also Figma, Studio, once the file, I can actually hear my computer spinning. It's because we're recording the screen.
We're recording screens, but mine's not. Because I don't have a massive file of it.
It's a big file, and I'm pretty sure my computer is going to die real fast. So we'll have to, you might see all of a sudden my computer's plugged in here.
Magically.
So I'll watch that. Pretty much everything's the same. You have a toolbar at the top that's a little bit less robust. There really isn't much there. It's mostly hidden under this kind of add thing. On the left, you have your layers and your pages, just like in Sketch. On your right, you have your inspector, so everything that you're creating out on the view. I will say I love the way that if I went to jump into creating an artboard, which is, and then in the middle, you have your workspace. Just like in Sketch, you can create artboards.
Makes sense.
I did A is a quick jump to that, but you can also do insert artboard. In Sketch, they kind of have things like nested. On this, I like the fact that it's all out in one view.
They're grouped, but
but you can kind of see them all. And I mostly jump to something that's like 15-inch. I like that they say this, like 15-inch Mac Pro.
Yeah.
Feels a little bit more like, oh, that's what I'm on. That will help.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to grab one of those right now. and you can zoom out and you can see. But even, I don't know if you'll be able to tell it on the video, but it's just a little laggy.
A little chunky, yeah.
It's a little laggy, which, like I said, my biggest complaint. When you have the artboard selected, you have kind of all the standard features that you would expect on an artboard, except that this interactions piece is different. And I don't actually know why there is any interactions there. Maybe it's because in the past, I'm going to delete those because those will be distracting.
Yeah, that's weird.
Same thing, you can expand, you can manage the background color, which we talked about in our sketch video, and then you can actually control a few things about how things scroll or how things are anchored, but for the most part, it's pretty basic. I do like that the settings for your artboards can be different, so you can actually manage your guides per artboard right here in the inspector, and that's kind of a cool
nice
feature. Beyond that, artboard's pretty straightforward. Nothing too much to write home about there.
I like a grid. I'm on this grid view right now.
I do use that occasionally.
Nice.
I'm going to jump through a couple things, and I want you to actually show kind of what you started
what I did here?
to create.
Okay.
Just pointing out the basic tools, very similar to other tools that you might have used. There is the rectangle tool, R, or the insert rectangle. There is one thing that's missing, which I'll talk about in a second. But you can create a rectangle. Again, it's pretty laggy. I think that's because my computer's struggling with recording this, but it's annoying.
But you've experienced it outside of just recording.
Especially as the file gets bigger.
Okay.
So,
well, I've seen that in Sketch as well.
Yeah.
If it's like 200, 300
especially when you get nested symbols and pretty much the same things. I can create shadows. I can create multiple layers of shadows. I can manage my borders. I like by default, it doesn't start with a border. It starts without a border.
Nice.
I almost always unselect the border.
Yeah.
So it's kind of nice that the little things like that, you can tell they took what they hated about Sketch and then they fixed that.
Yeah, which is the beauty of making your own software.
Yeah, totally. Although I can't imagine the undertaking to actually do this.
Dude.
There's inner shadows.
Shattering your inner spirit.
The one thing that's a little bit different is it's a little hard to tell how you manage this stuff. You have to use a right click to delete layers of information.
Whoa, really?
It's kind of nice because you don't have as many of those little icons kind of out on the view, but you don't know it's there unless you right click. And I had to Google that to find some of the ways to manage my inspector.
Wow.
A couple other things that are a little bit different and pretty powerful, although Sketch now has this, but I want to say Studio kind of pioneered this, which is how you anchor your information either on center or from top left, top right, top bottom. And then that controls how things move inside of it.
Which also, we didn't talk about in the Sketch video, but you also have to manipulate quite a bit of that if you really want to utilize symbols to the best of their ability. Like
totally.
Where you're typing a name and you want content to
Slicing,
adjust.
that kind of thing.
It takes a while to really understand, and I don't fully understand it a lot of the times.
Kind of have to hack with it a few times until it gets it right.
But this kind of, I'm guessing, plays into their version of symbols. They don't call them symbols, or do they?
No, they call them components.
Components.
So that's just some nomenclature, some kind of jargon that's a little bit different. Pretty much everything else is the same except that it's components versus symbols.
Okay.
Maybe they didn't want to completely copy Sketch. So pretty much everything else is the same. So I'm not going to go through like how to design something out. But the biggest difference, and I think the thing that we want to take the time to kind of unpack, is the prototyping that you can do right inside.
Directly in the application.
Yeah. So I'm going to jump over real quick to the kind of nth level of where your prototyping can go, and then I want you to talk about some of the ways that we can talk about some animation that you can do, which Sketch is not able to do at all. So this is an app that we're working on, a little mobile app that we're working on inside of Crema here. You might have heard about it, Jog. We've made lots of videos about it. It's been completely redesigned, so you're getting a little sneak peek into what it's going to look like soon. But this is an example where I have many, many artboards out on the view. And what I've done here is as you move through this, you can see these little lightning bolts. And those lightning bolts represent that there's an interaction. An interaction is anything that I could click on that and it would do something. Most of it's just like click on the thing, jump to another screen, and what kind of transition you want to have happen. Does it slide to the left? Does it slide to the top? Does it fade? All those kind of different things. There's a more advanced version of that, which is where you use the motion feature, which we'll look at in a second, because I think it'll be easier to see in what you have.
And actually, do you want to show the lines too, how crazy that gets?
Yeah. So the way to turn your lines on and off, because it does get a bit crazy, is just to tap the X. When you're selected on one item, you can see here that only that item is showing up
That interaction.
that interaction. So when I click on this button, it's going to go to this screen. So up here in the top right, these are the prototyping features. You don't have these in Sketch. They have a prototyping thing that's not quite as robust as this. I can click on this preview, and it's going to load up everything in the preview, and it's going to make it look kind of like a phone.
Yeah.
And so you're on that view, and one thing that is while you're on that, I don't think I said my words right there. One thing while you're on this is, and I'm going to just Alt-Tab back and forth, or Alt, what's that? Ellipses? What's that called?
Tilde.
Tilde. Yeah. Depending on what you're selected on, I'm going to be proven wrong here. This should work. It takes you to the screen in the prototype.
Nice.
So it's kind of that's kind of a hidden feature, but you start to learn like, oh, how did I get over there? No, I just need to go back to this view.
Yeah, that's cool.
And then you're back on it. So while in this view, you can kind of see I have this like what would be my finger, and I can tap on it, and you can see it transition to going to this next screen. So that's where the prototyping really becomes pretty powerful and pretty exciting, because then you can kind of go through this whole experience, and there's some motion that's happening there, but I didn't get too into the motion. These are kind of honestly some things that kind of accidentally happened, but it ended up being kind of cool.
Yeah.
So, so you can kind of prototype that all out.
No,
if you want to see the whole thing,
this is crazy. And it gets really slow, right?
Oh yeah, when it's on, you can see that this shows you how everything is connected.
Wow. So clicking outside of a specific artboard or element.
Just basically unselecting any particular artboard shows you all the connections, and X again will hide that.
Which that's true for both Sketch. Actually, those are the exact same. X and
And that works exactly the same in Sketch. The nice thing about this, and this is true in Sketch as well, but the nice thing about this is that as I was copying and pasting artboards to recreate views and kind of move fast to kind of build this all out, I realized that certain things were tied to like the old.
Totally.
Yeah.
Hate that.
And so like seeing the line back to that, where I said that line going way over there when it should be just only next to its thing, that helps. It helps a lot.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. Like you could, so that's a little safety thing. It's just so toggling on the X like that is really handy to know that if I were to duplicate this artboard and I'm really meaning to use this for something else, I'm really meaning to use this like shape for something else. Having that turned on makes me think, oh my gosh, that's meant to be totally detached from there. So I'd have to go over and delete that. So being aware of that before you copy things over, really useful. Otherwise, you might have a dozen screens that are linking to the wrong pieces.
Yeah, so I don't want to take too much time to go into too many other features. Honestly, you could go back and watch our Sketch video when we introduced you to how to use rectangles and circles and rounded corners.
So.
Pretty much all of that applies here. So go watch that video for how to use a basic editing visual editor, and then come back and you can do all the same things here. I'm gonna run out of battery. So I'm gonna go as long as I can here until it kills me. And then some of these other features up at the top here about how to sync it up with InVision. So you can actually ship and it'll sync to whatever InVision project you want. The interactions that I pointed out, I guess I could do that here. The interactions that I pointed out, let's go. Oh boy, pretty heavy. Asking a lot of this little MacBook.
Come on, little MacBook.
You can see the interactions in your panel on the right here, and you can choose whether or not you use a preset or motion, and then I'll let you kind of unpack the motion. But the preset will mostly just choose from, do you want it to be like slide left, right, up, and down? I kind of mentioned that. If you want to get rid of this interaction altogether, you can right-click and then delete, or you can copy. Now, here's one little tip I did run into is if you have objects grouped, and you wanted to link, maybe it's like this button, right? And this button is made up of a box, and it's made up of text in the middle of the box. If I accidentally double-clicked in and I was selected on the text and I made an interaction out here, and then I unclicked and I looked at the group, well, it doesn't look like anything's interacted, right? And so then I make another interaction to someplace different or even to the same place. I technically have two interactions there, and it can kind of make things wonky. So just double check that you're in the right thing that you want to interact. Because I think that's pretty important to make sure it works well. And then one other thing, and this is cool for the prototyping. Let me find the view that I have it on before my computer dies. One of these guys would work. Nope, let's do it on the home page. So if I preview this view, you'll see, and this is actually huge, that as I scroll, this stuff here, the little fab and the navigation are fixed.
Yeah, and And floating.
And floating above it. And that's just by actually selecting this group, and then I told it to pin this thing. So you can pin it. Now, it is weird because when you're working in the editor, you can kind of see this is like laying in the middle of the view. You have to like get it to the spot where it's going to be fixed.
You know it's going to be anchored at the bottom of the view.
Yeah, and then it is kind of in the way, but then past that, it's not that big of a deal.
So mine's incredibly basic, and this is a little...
Just two artboards, two views.
Artboards. And so that's an important thing, which I think we'll cover in a more detailed video about animation, things like that. So there's just two views. I started out with artboard 1. It has the little home icon there. And just have some text there.
Yep.
Over a rectangle that I took the radius of that and made the radius like 100 of those of the corners. Anyway, and I duplicated this artboard over. So what you're actually seeing here is I've selected this the blue button background.
Yep.
That's actually this shape.
Yeah. So what you did is when you duplicated that artboard.
So I took an artboard, took that one, brought this over, and I selected that and just blew it up.
Yeah. And the reason he did that is because we'll see here in a second. But in order to make something animate from one artboard to another, this took me a while to kind of wrap my head around. From one artboard to another, you need to have the exact same object, and all that you're really able to do is change the parameters of that object between views. So either position, scale, radius, anything that's on that inspect can pretty much change from view to view, but you can't make something appear. It has to be on the original. So like say you wanted to have something slide in from the edge of the screen, it would be, you would have to have that thing exist here, and then just push it off the screen on the first artboard and then bring it in on the second artboard.
So an example of that, is like I want this here, it has to be off and invisible here.
Yeah, which is hard because if you accidentally drag it too far, it's actually out on the outside of an artboard. So you kind of, I end up using the arrow key to get it out there.
So there's it selected, and if I just do it, now it hopped out to its own. Yeah. But if I pull it back, it's on the artboard. It's still attached. Right. So, but in this example, all I've done is selected this blue. Well, I've made an artboard, duplicated that, changed the attributes of the circle, so that's the same piece. So when I preview it, what I wanted to do was that button to blow up and fill the screen. So I'll just select that to start with and do the really simple prototype. I'm going to click on that shape that I just said.
So cool.
And so and by default, that's the default animation that
it did that without you tweaking it at all.
So I just click on the shape and whoop, it fills the screen. So also this start text is also that welcome text. Now I don't think there's a way to really elegantly.
If somebody knows of a way to transform text, let us know, but I don't know a way to do it.
If you could, and I hope it conveys well on the video, but I think it sort of fades out and then fades toward the top. So that's a really simple animation, but you can see how beautiful like that transition is.
So let's real quickly jump into the timeline so you can see what else you can do to tweak that.
So what we want to show here is by default, that animation that you saw was just the default preset animation that they have.
Yeah, so it's just basically going to say, well, I think I saw this thing change from this to this. I'll normalize it and just stretch it linearly over there.
And so that's what this is showing here, linearly. Okay, so what I've done is selected the object that has that interaction attributed to it, and it's preset. So if I say motion, this allows me to go in and change some of that. So I can do something as simple as, say that duration of that animation was 0.3 seconds. I want to do it like 3.5 seconds, just to illustrate the point. It's going to take a lot longer, and that's actually...
Oh, it's so satisfying.
Yeah, it is.
That's actually pretty smooth. I wish the rest of it was that
smooth. So that's one really simple way to edit it. But I can undo that and go into a timeline. Yeah. Which is even more ridiculous.
Here you see all of the layers that you have. These are only going to show up for the layer, if I understand right, these only show up for the layers that are on both artboards. If a layer is only on one artboard and it is not also duplicated on the other artboard, that we just wouldn't be there.
I think that's right, because there's nothing to animate. There's not that interaction.
That's correct.
So what I would like to do is take this whole transition, I'm hoping I'm doing this right, and do more of a quick into a slow. So I want it to be fast in the beginning and go slow. Cool. So I'm just gonna try to mess with that a bit.
And it gives you the preview off to the right, I think.
Oh, did it?
Isn't that your preview?
There it was. So actually, that may not have done what I wanted it to.
I think it did the opposite.
So I'm going to bring it back to...
I have to be honest, I'm not great. Even when I used to do animation, I was never really great at knowing how to use these tools.
That's actually true. If you have any animation background, this stuff is really fun, I think.
Yeah. I just was never very good at it.
So we kind of wanted to have this slow and then quick and then much slower at the end. Let's see if that turned out like I want. You know what it is? It's because it's only 0.3 seconds.
Yeah, so you need to stretch
out
out
the whole thing to be a second long. I think this will just kind of show.
Yeah, it'll accentuate it a little bit.
Yeah. There it goes.
Yeah, that's nice.
So yeah, you kind of have more of that. I know there's a word for it, but there's sort of that motion.
I feel like we should know what that is, but I can't think of it.
Now I just look
Bezier. A Bezier curve.
Bezier curve.
What's the word I'm looking for?
I know that's definitely a word.
I don't know what it is.
But yeah, it just it's more. It's just more customized in that way. So you can do a lot of tweaking in here, and I think that. So like as another example, it looks like I can't click into these because those pieces themselves.
So it does show them, but they're not. Yeah. Okay.
They're not the ones that have the interaction, but they are on the artboard, so they show up.
Yeah.
I guess.
So that's that. Really, this is the most powerful part of Studio. Here's what I'll say is when you start to get into animating several artboards from artboard to artboard, try to keep your project overall pretty simple. It gets pretty heavy. Like even that one for Jog that had some that were just preset and some that were motion. It's the app, that particular doc is pretty rough right now because of that.
And that's, yours is a pretty extreme case. So you're thinking through a ton of instances.
It's the entire app experience.
Yeah.
Instead of thinking about kind of
a prototype.
Yeah.
Simply a prototype that begins to be built and you kind of add on in those phases.
That's right.
Yeah.
I do think this is a really powerful tool though. I've been really happy with using it. I've gotten really comfortable. The keyboard shortcuts. Oh, I did want to point out there's one thing that's missing while you're here. There's no line tool. We didn't really talk about that in our intro to Sketch, but a tool that I use a lot is just drawing a line. They technically, did it fade the color?
Yeah. So on here on the artboard, that same shape that still has this interaction, I changed it to pink or red.
Yeah, it's super cool.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Well, let me finish the line tool. So the way that you would do a line tool here is you'd use the pin tool and you just select it from one spot to another. And it feels just like the line tool.
So that's like
a little
traditional divider or something.
Quite as I felt like the line tool was just faster because it was just a line tool and it wasn't trying to make a path. The path tool is really what it's trying to do. So the animation tool is cool. It's neat.
Super cool.
And it's great for designers to show off. I think it's a really dangerous tool.
How do you mean?
I think it's dangerous because it often introduces complexities that are not necessary at the stage, at least, that when we're prototyping and getting ideas out. I will say most apps that I use that have animations like that, I get really annoyed really fast because it just doesn't do the thing I need to do fast. This suggests that everything slows down and that it's an experience, and like every designer wants that until you actually have to deal with it on a daily basis. And that's why you think of like the most popular apps like Instagram or WhatsApp, or they're fast and they don't have these transitions like that.
That's a good point, yeah.
Or if they do, they're so fast that like you don't even see them almost. So just, I would say guard yourself for how much you nerd out on it. Have fun with it, show off, and like dribble it out, right? Because you're gonna go to Dribble or Musical.ly and see all of these like other designers that have created these beautiful animations. But in reality, in the wild, that's not a really practical way to use an app.
That's true, and you could even sort of, if you were to look back at the Jog stuff you've done, you are mostly using animation for the onboarding experience.
100%. Once I'm in the app, I really don't want there to be much animation at all, if any. Maybe a slide over. That's about it.
Yeah.
So just be careful with that tool, but it is a lot of fun to play with and to kind of dream of what you can interact with here. I do think this is a really competitive. I feel like they've slowed down a little bit with like the releases of updates. I feel like I haven't seen a big update to Studio in a while. But,
well, I haven't updated it in months.
That's your fault.
It is.
But it's absolutely gorgeous what you can accomplish in here.
Yeah.
If you guys have any other questions or thoughts or something that we maybe missed, drop us a comment. Let us know. Like I said, I've only built one app in it. I just touched my mic. Whoops. I've only built one experience in it. You've built that.
And animation.
Which is incredible that you were able to kind of pick it up that quickly to know what it does.
Yeah. Well, I had looked at it before. And again, like any animation that you have done if you've done that previously, it is incredibly helpful.
Any knowledge of tweening or transitioning like that is helpful. Yep.
But I think the animations can get even more robust than that, which I think we could dive into in the deep dive video.
Yeah. Is there going to be a deep dive video? Are we ready for a deep dive video? I don't know that I'm qualified for a deep dive video.
That's a good point. But we did this.
Hey, if you want to see us do a deep dive video on InVision Studio once we've learned it, or maybe
why are you putting this out there for the people?
The people can tell us what they want. It's a feedback loop. That's how we build products. As always, thank you so much for watching our videos. Don't forget to like, subscribe,
ring that bell. This kind of thing. Well done. Okay.
There's I'm gonna rabbit trail and I don't need to. Thank you guys. We're having a lot of fun. I hope you like this content. I hope you like learning more about the tools and the ways that we do our work every day. And be sure to tell your friends, and we'll see you guys next time.